Welcome to the Liberating Joy and Learning podcast. I'm Verena Beckstrand, and today we're continuing this season or category of our podcast entitled Liberating Healing in Our Learning by taking a look at how toxic perfectionism affects our learning. To do that, we'll be using information from BYU Studies, Volume 63, Number 4. So let's start with healthy perfectionism. In the first article, Understanding Perfectionism, we learned that this is when an individual sets high goals and strives for rewards, yet they are flexible and understanding if they do not reach their own set expectations. Furthermore, striving for excellence is vitalizing and energizing, and it opens the possibility of continued growth. On the other hand, in the introduction, we learn that toxic perfectionism is more about how we feel about ourselves when we don't meet our standards or when we make mistakes. In the first article, we read that toxic perfectionism occurs when individuals demand perfection and become highly critical of themselves or others, turning normal mistakes into shame and self-hatred or hatred of others. It often includes an all-or-nothing mindset. Later, Deborah McClendon states, unhealthy perfectionism is a frantic effort to live error-free, the tendency to believe that there is a perfect solution to every problem, that doing something perfectly, mistake-free, is not only possible but also necessary, and that even minor mistakes will have serious consequences. When people fail to meet their own unattainably high standards, they are overcome by anxiety, panic, and obsessive rumination about their perceived failures. Unhealthy perfectionism does not enhance a person's quality of life or motivate them to improve. Instead, it decreases their quality of life and inhibits true personal growth and development. So clearly, toxic perfectionism is not what we want.
Right.
That's never been a goal for Learning Liberated. No. We want to liberate ourselves from all of that. So what learning blockade that we've just talked about most calls to you in leading towards toxic perfectionism? What blockade is going to lead you toward toxic perfectionism the most?
I think the fighting learning cycles,
fighting learning seasons.
Fighting learning seasons is probably it's the biggest, in my mind, I think is one of the easiest one to get trapped in that toxic perfectionism, because you set a goal for yourself, you're trying to do something, and in order to get there you think, I have to do exactly these exact steps to get there. And then when you trip up and miss a step, you think, oh crap, I got to start all over again. Mm-hmm. And you get in this cycle of trying to do the same thing over and over again, and you may not trip up in the same spot, you may trip up in another spot, and you just get caught in this cycle that you either become numb to anything else and make no real growth, or you just start feeling like a failure and you give up and don't want to do anything.
Right. I think it's because you can become limited in your perspective in what you see as a valid step for that growth.
Right.
So if you don't recognize the other seasons, whether it be rest or whether it be, different kinds of exercise or whatever, there's a lot of different seasons that we may not see.
Right.
And if we're stuck in just a couple of them, then that's going to throw up blockades for us.
Right.
So we can't keep learning because we're not using all of the different opportunities we have for learning in that area.
Right. And it blinds us to, because if we're talking about toxic perfectionism, but you started off talking about what healthy perfectionism is, where we strive for our goals. We strive for excellence, mm-hmm. but we realize that sometimes the path there is not exactly what we anticipate.
Right, for a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Flexibility is definitely part of that healthy perfectionism.
And when you're inflexible and think that there's only one way to attain that goal, that's where you start getting that toxic perfectionism, where you start beating yourself up instead of saying, this is a learning experience, how do I apply it so I can get better?
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm thinking of the accepting deceit, where we believe things that aren't true about learning.
Right.
That's going to hinder us, right? If we don't have truths to guide our learning by, or the right truths for that kind of learning, we're going to be hindered. And it could be really great truth for another kind of learning, another goal or another season or whatever.
Right.
But if it's not the right kind of learning that we need for that learning that we need right now, it's going to hinder us. It's going to lead to that toxic perfectionism. Right. So the other question is, what else can we do to avoid this?
Well, again, focus on the learning, the primary lenses.
Yeah.
I think that's if you have the right mindset, you're going to see, okay, maybe it's the season I need to get out of and put it aside. Or maybe I need to find a mentor to help me get through it. or I can't think of all of them right now as an example, but you focus on those primary lenses, and if you focus on the primary lenses, that will get you through these blockades and over the toxic perfectionism.
Right. And sometimes the working with resistance in this case is just looking at those primary lenses.
Right.
And I think that our heart can lead us to the one that will help us.
Right.
You need to look at wondering, or you need to look at owning your failures and successes, and that will help
Right.
you get through and keep progressing in
Right.
your learning and avoid that toxic perfectionism.
Right. All right, in the last episode, we talked about the learning blockade of obeying a master. W. Justin Dyer addresses this in his article, Perfectionism Across Adolescence. He says that research has found that when someone is forced into a single path, they are less motivated and less satisfied by that path. On the other hand, having more than one option to choose from can lead a person to experience greater motivation and enjoyment in their choice. Dyer also explains that too many options may cause paralysis, and this may be particularly true for youth prone to perfectionism. Scholars have used the term choice overload. This reinforces the idea that joyful learning is owned, put on hold, or let go. When we can do that, we are more likely to avoid toxic perfectionism, which I think is very important, that sometimes there's too many choices. You've got too many things you need to do. Well, decide, okay, this isn't important to me right now. It's not a value that I need to work on, so I can set it aside.
Right, and that goes way back to those introductory principles of choosing the learning that we want.
Right. So how has being free to choose your learning paths led you to more motivation and satisfaction?
Just knowing that we're free to choose what we want to learn it just liberates so much energy.
Right.
It's so much, when I know that it's my choice and that I have that power to make that decision, then suddenly I have all sorts of energy. Then I'm excited about what I'm doing it. In that same article, Dyer explains that since the 1970s, many Western cultures seem to have turned away from the importance of membership in groups, such as religion and family, and toward a competitive individualism, where an individual's identity is based on comparison to others rather than value coming from being part of something larger than oneself. Since then, we have seen a rise in perfectionism alongside the rise of a more individualistic culture. This intrigues me. When we feel a part of a group, then we don't feel like our mistakes affect us as much. This goes against the idea that in being with other people, we feel more shame when we make mistakes. If people are aware of our mistakes, then we're going to have more shame. So this intrigues me that reducing those groups increases perfectionism.
Yeah, the toxic perfectionism.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But maybe when we feel unity with others, we don't beat ourselves up over our mistakes as much. Certainly, if we see more if we're together more and we see more mistakes, maybe we need to see more of each other's mistakes than less, right? It certainly reminds me of the starter principle of learning together builds powerful and joyful relationships that help maximize our learning efforts.
Right.
So how has being a part of a community helped you avoid shame in learning?
Well, I think when you're part of a community, whether it's part of a religious group, whether it's part of a group at work, whether it's part of a family, you tend to learn together. You tend to do things together. Granted, you may have individual things that you're doing on your own, but when you're part of a group, that group is there as a support, and they help you get over struggles. They help you get over mistakes. When you're in a collaborative environment at work or at school, everybody's part of the team, and everybody's ideas are coming in. And so if somebody's idea doesn't work, then somebody else there is to pick you up.
Right.
And so you're not so worried about, okay, I've got to be perfect on this. I've got to do it right because there's nobody else to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we start getting in trouble. Sometimes it's okay to go off on your own if you do have the skill set, but quite often we don't.
Right. On some level, there will definitely be things that we do on our own.
Right.
But I think that based on what they're saying is here, we tend to avoid them because we don't spend a lot of time in them. But if we were to spend more time in those groups, then we would get better at interacting and working together.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking, if I'm with them, they'll see my mistakes, and that's not going to be a good thing.
Right.
So we'll end our podcast today with a few thoughts from Dyer's conclusion. Sometimes we may think that tying our worth to our success will help us succeed. We may think that feelings of self-hate and loathing will keep us from making the same mistakes again. At one time or another, most of us have called ourselves all the meanest names ever invented after we've made a mistake. And maybe not just once, but years down the road, right? Yet even as a short-term strategy, this is ineffective, not to mention unproductive and wrong. In the long run, when we devalue ourselves for any reason, we strip away our motivation and a foundation upon which to progress. So, yes.
Yes.
Right? And I just wish I could convince myself of that.
Right. And progression is essential. Recognizing our mistakes is key to mental health. We become lost when we cannot identify our right and wrong choices. It is the Lord's covenants to provide the essential map to our heavenly home, yet trying to achieve progress by beating ourselves down only makes us feel stuck. By sensing the Savior's constant and unearned love calling us from ahead and supporting us from behind, we can believe in our progress and feel lifted when we fall. In the end, we hope readers of this special issue have found insights that can help them more joyfully walk the covenant path. Often we most clearly see the Lord's perfections as He loves us in our weakness. When we see the way the Lord loves us, we can more easily forgive the imperfections in ourselves and others.
I really, really don't want this podcast just to be for even just Christians.
Right.
And I hope that each of you, as you hear how we talk about God and how we talk about Jesus Christ, that you will think of whatever deity or great goodness out there that inspires you, right? And this is just ours, but we hope you'll consider, how does God help you overcome perfectionism? How does God help you when you're learning?
Right. I think it's very important to understand that it gets back to that concept of choice. We're given this ability to choose what we want to do and how we want to progress, how we want to improve. And we're never going to be alone. We're never going to be doing this alone. We're always going to have somebody there by our side helping us along, as long as we understand that we're not perfect.
Yeah. And clearly I just don't think learning would be possible if there wasn't a sense of some eternal being out there that we were progressing toward on some level. So
what's the use of it if you're not going to be able to take it with you? All right, now that wraps up our discussion of the difference between healthy and toxic perfectionism and aspects of learning found in BYU Studies, Volume 63, Number 4. If you have other thoughts about this topic, we'd love to hear them. And as always, if you have questions or comments, message us at learningliberated@gmail.com or on our Learning Liberated Facebook group with any questions or comments. And again, if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else that might enjoy it as well. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.